Hello, my name is Kim Nguyen, and I'm a member of the senior seminar class at Troy University. As part of our class, I had the privilege of helping coordinate this year's Horne Waters Prize event. Today, I am honored to introduce an interview with Jennifer Horne, the 2025 winner of the Horne Waters Prize for Excellence in Silent Writing. We hope you enjoy learning about her work and hearing from her today.
Ms. Horne, thank you for joining us here today. We're so glad to have you. We're just going to ask you a few questions today. So to start, your 2024 biography of Sarah Mayfield, Odyssey of a Wandering Mind, tells the story of a childhood friend of Zelda Sayre Fitzgerald. Sarah's life paralleled Zelda's in many ways, although Mayfield late in life became a prolific writer, publishing 2 biographies and a novel. This is the first biography you've written, so a question for you. How do you write biographies, and what are the greatest challenges within that?
It was hard, partly because I'd never done it before, partly because nobody had ever written a biography of Sarah Mayfield, so I was starting from scratch. And I also didn't know how to handle the question of her mental health and mental illness since she was in Bryce Hospital for 17 years. So I had a lot to think about and a lot to cover, and she saved everything she ever had in her life. It's all in the University of Alabama Special Collections Library, so I had about 21 boxes of materials to go through. I started by looking at everything and then looking for patterns. And after I looked for patterns, I set up a narrative and I wrote a great big giant 600-page book where you couldn't see the forest for the trees. And then I cut it in half and ended up with the story that's now in the book. That's a narrative tale of this woman and her life.
Great. Sarah and Zelda grew up as Southern belles, but they both rebelled against that identity by seeking their own creative outlets. What does Sarah Mayfield represent about her generation, and how can a modern woman today relate to her?
It's funny because we look back and they seem kind of old-fashioned to us, right? Mm-hmm. They thought they were very modern. They were very, they were part of the 20th century, you know. Their parents had been born in the 19th century. And they thought of Montgomery as a modern city, but a lot of the old rules for how women, especially white upper and upper middle class women, should behave were in place. And it really restricted what they felt like they could do in life. So as you say, they rebelled, they left town, they took different paths. And I think for me, what I learned from writing about Sarah is that you probably will pay something for not being conventional, for not being traditional, but it's better to go ahead and be your own independent self, to find the courage to be who you are, and make your own path. For myself, there's a push-pull. I'm in some ways a fairly conventional, traditional person. There's a nonconformist side of me, but I still want to dress right for an event, you know? And so I think you have to find your own space where you can be comfortable and find that balance between the two.
So turning back to Sarah, she lived for large portions of her life in mental health facilities. Tell us a little bit about her diagnoses, what she thought about her doctor's treatments of her, and whether you see her time there justified.
Yeah, that's the big question about her life. She had a short time in the Shepherd Pratt Hospital and then Bryce in 1940, and then the 17 years from 1948 to 65. As I read her journals, her letters, I was able to get her patient records from Bryce Hospital to compare with what she thought was going on in her life. And I did come to the conclusion, she was given first a diagnosis of paranoid precox and then paranoid condition on the second institutionalization. I did come to the conclusion that she did have a mental illness. She did have paranoia. She had sometimes delusions. She often thought that people were out to get her, that they were in a plot against her. She thought the other patients were what she called stooges who were sent there to spy on her. At the same time, she was rational in many ways, capable in many ways. She could keep track of her weekly grocery expenses just fine. She gave birthday parties for the other patients. She did art and music and writing. So while I came to the conclusion that she did have an actual mental illness, which today would just probably be treated with medication and checking in with the therapist, she didn't need to be in the institution for all those years. She could have managed outside, but for a variety of reasons, given the mental health system at the time, her family situation, and her refusal to take the short-term furlough that they were offering her, she stayed.
Yeah.
Since your biography, you've published a poetry collection called Letters to Little Rock. This collection explains your relationship with your father and growing up in Little Rock. When did you know that this would be a cohesive book of poems instead of a standard collection of unrelated works? And what have you learned from this whole experience?
It took a little while to figure out that it was going to be, I didn't even know it was going to be a collection of poems at all. My father died fairly suddenly. He'd been in pretty good health. In 2017, in November 1st, he was able to come to Montgomery from Little Rock to attend the commissioning of Poet Laureate with Governor Ivey. And so it came as a shock. And so a lot of the initial writing was just kind of processing that grief, just getting things out in the way that writers do. And then I kept writing things, and I had a fortuitous conversation with a friend who, when I complained about things being too messy, too inchoate, said, well, you might try forms. And as I started thinking about forms, I thought, maybe this is a book, and maybe it will occur in a lot of different forms that show how you can use form and structure as a kind of balance to the messy emotions of grief. And kept thinking about stories my dad had told me and things that happened when I was when I was a child. And somehow it became a book. And then the poems kind of fell into the structure of grief, thinking back on stories he had said, thinking about on childhood stories, and then a kind of resolution process towards the end.
That was such a beautiful answer.
Oh, thank you.
In recent years, you've also co-edited collections of essays on women, spirituality, and aging. What is the difference between editing your own work and editing the work of others, especially one that is such a personal topic for others?
Yeah, and that's a good point, that these essays really are very personal. And sometimes I thought, I'm so grateful that somebody wrote this, but I didn't know they were going to go there, where they went. Editing my own work is something that I learned to do as I grew as a writer, but especially through graduate school, the MFA in creative writing. And you learn a lot in a creative writing workshop about how to look at a poem or another piece of writing from a lot of different angles to figure out how to make it better. I usually need a little distance on my own work to figure that out. It might be a week, it might be a month, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year. But eventually I can see it with some clarity and say, like, that line needs to go out. I repeated that word 5 times and I didn't mean to. The poem really starts here. All the kinds of things that it takes a while to see. Editing other people's work is something I really love to do. I like the editing process at all levels. My goal is to help that person tell the story they want to tell in the voice that is natural to them. So I always read with an eye to, what does this person sound like in words? What do they need to say in those words? And how can I help them get to that? So it's a kind of a midwife process. I try not to ever take over and make it mine. I want it to be theirs. Yeah.
You've been a Southerner all of your life, going from Arkansas to Alabama. My question for you is, how do you maintain the Southernness within your writing, and do you feel it's important to do so?
It's funny. In some ways, I feel I don't have a choice. I just am a person of the South in the way that a plant that grows best in this climate, that's me. Being away my junior year in college in England and then having spent time abroad has helped me get a better sense from being outside of the South, what the South is and who I am as a Southerner. I do value manners. I value traditions. I value a certain ease and friendliness that you often find in the South. I love conversations with strangers. I was in the Winn-Dixie parking lot. Winn-Dixie, I mean, it's just right there in the name. We don't even think about it. And a woman came up to me and said, "I really like your shoes. Where did you get those?" And then I went inside, and there was a man who was buying a cabbage, and he was complaining, reasonably, about the price of cabbages. And he was on his way home, and he didn't want to go somewhere else to buy a cabbage, but wasn't that an expensive cabbage? So I leave the store, and I've already had these two really interesting encounters that I just don't think would happen somewhere else. But the place, the culture, the complicated history that the South has, that no other part of the United States has, all fascinate me. They're comfortable and then a little bit uncomfortable at the same time. And I think that's probably good for creativity, that rub between those things. It's the oyster making the pearl,
So congratulations once again on being named. One of your amazing things that has happened in your life is being named Alabama's 12th Poet Laureate. Congratulations again for that. So looking back, how do you feel your tenure as Alabama's 12th Poet Laureate shaped you personally and creatively?
I'm going to come at that a little bit from the side. I've spent a good bit of time in Ireland over the past years with my husband's organizing of an Alabama and Ireland program for UA students. And then I started going to the Yeats Society's International Summer School up in Sligo, Ireland. And I got a sense of what poets are in Ireland. There's a sense of a public presence of a poet. It was William Butler Yeats and then Seamus Heaney. And I kind of studied those people, and I liked what they did. I liked that ordinary people might know who those poets were or say one of their poems. And it helped me think about the role of the poet in society. And even though it's out of my comfort zone, that's something I wanted to do, that I wanted to be that public face for literature, that I didn't want to just stay at my desk and send books out, that I wanted to engage with people and talk to them about poetry. And so being Poet Laureate gave me the chance to do that and to be kind of a translator, in a sense, of poetry to make it more comfortable for people. And that's been so valuable, and I think still continues, even though I'm not doing it anymore.
You've come so far within your career. You've won multiple awards, prizes, and residencies. What has been your favorite aspect of your career so far, and what would you say to an aspiring author?
I want to say everything. Really publishing my first book of poems at age 50, when I really had started to wonder whether I was going to get a book or not. That's probably the milestone place where I thought, okay, I have done this. I am going to be able to do this. And then getting to be Poet Laureate after a couple of books. And really, I mean, I'm not just saying this today. This is a wonderful recognition. I just feel so honored to win this prize. It says that people get me. They understand what I've been doing, and that means the world.
Well, thank you for coming out for us today, and we are honored to give you the Hall Waters Prize.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I didn't talk about what advice I would give to younger writers, so I can go ahead and do that. I think it's important to think of yourself as a writer, and that might mean writing every day. It might mean going ahead and getting a headshot or having a short biographical note written up that you could send out. It might mean organizing a reading series or a zine or a reading group, a writing group. But the thing that I come back to again and again is that you don't wait till you have inspiration. You don't wait till some far off day when you'll have time to write, because life is busy. So you find a little time or a lot of time, however you can, but you find it every day, and you live your life as a writer, and you listen to what people say in parking lots. Yeah.
I think that was definitely such an important thing for young, inspiring writers to hear. And we just want to say thank you once again for joining us. I know Troy University has had such a great time hosting you, and you were just lovely.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
My name is Tiffany Griffiths, a member of the senior seminar class who participated in coordinating the Hall Waters event. You just watched an interview of Jennifer Horne, the 2025 winner of the Hall Waters Prize for Excellence in Southern Writing. Our class is honored to have given this prize to Ms. Horne, and we hope that you have enjoyed learning about and from her today.